Japan corporate energy procurement is moving past utilities. Why is Japan's corporate energy procurement market moving beyond utility dominance? Japan's electricity market has technically been liberalized for years, but many large commercial and industrial buyers have continued to rely on traditional utility procurement structures. That model is becoming less durable. A convergence of policy changes, carbon pricing, corporate decarbonization pressure, and rapid growth in corporate power purchase agreements, PPAs, is reshaping how companies operating in Japan evaluate electricity procurement. For multinational manufacturers, logistics operators, semiconductor companies, and data center developers, the transition is no longer theoretical. It is beginning to affect long-term cost exposure, renewable energy access, and competitive positioning. Japan's corporate PPA market has grown quickly from a near-standing start. According to Japan Energy Hub, publicly disclosed corporate PPA transactions have surpassed 500 cumulative deals since the first corporate PPA was signed in Japan in 2021, representing more than 2.5 gigawatts of installed and planned renewable energy capacity. Bird & Bird's May 2026 analysis found that 148 corporate PPA transactions were publicly announced in 2025, including 33 virtual PPAs. That is approximately 5 times the 2022 level, when 30 corporate PPA deals were announced, including 6 virtual PPAs. The broader Asia-Pacific corporate clean energy market weakened in 2025, but Japan stood out. Bloomberg NEF reported that corporate clean energy buying declined across Asia-Pacific, largely due to slower activity in India and South Korea, while Japan recorded 1.1 gigawatts of activity, making it a regional bright spot. That record year is central to understanding Japan's market trajectory. Corporate procurement is not merely expanding gradually. Japan is becoming one of the more active growth markets for renewable contracting in the region. The Fit-to-FIP transition is changing market incentives. One of the most important structural shifts underway involves Japan's transition away from its long-running feed-in tariff (FIT) system. Japan introduced the FET framework in 2012 following the Fukushima disaster to accelerate renewable energy deployment. Under the program, renewable energy developers sold electricity to utilities at guaranteed fixed prices for extended periods, typically 20 years. The structure helped stimulate renewable energy development, particularly solar deployment, but it also insulated many market participants from wholesale price exposure and limited the direct contracting relationship between generators and corporate buyers. That model is gradually being replaced by the feed-in premium (FP) system. Under the FIP framework, renewable generators sell electricity into wholesale markets or directly to corporate buyers through PPAs, while receiving a premium payment tied to market participation. This creates stronger price signals and increases the importance of direct contracting relationships between generators and large electricity consumers. For corporate buyers, the practical implication is significant. Renewable electricity that was once largely routed through utility supply structures is increasingly being offered through direct procurement arrangements tied to specific projects, generation profiles, and market-linked pricing mechanisms. In practice, this moves Japan closer to procurement structures already common in the United States, Australia, and parts of Europe. The companies that develop internal expertise around these structures earlier may be better positioned to evaluate contract tenor, pricing risk, curtailment exposure, and claims quality before the market becomes more crowded. Carbon pricing is beginning to alter the cost comparison. Japan's broader GX, or green transformation, strategy is adding another layer of pressure to procurement decisions. In February 2025, Japan approved the GX 2040 vision alongside its updated energy and climate policy framework. The country's February 2025 nationally determined contribution set a target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 73% by fiscal 2040 from fiscal 2013 levels. Japan's verified renewable electricity target remains 36% to 38% by fiscal 2030. Any longer-term renewable share assumptions for fiscal 2040 should be treated carefully unless tied to a specific published government source. Carbon pricing is now moving from policy design into implementation. Japan's GX ETS began as a voluntary baseline and credit system from fiscal 2023 through fiscal 2025. On April 1st, 2026, it entered its mandatory phase for fiscal 2026 through fiscal 2032. A fossil fuel surcharge is planned for 2028, and auctioning for high-emitting power sector companies is expected to begin in fiscal 2033. For large electricity consumers, these policy changes matter because they alter the long-term comparison between conventional utility supply and renewable procurement. Historically, many corporate buyers evaluated renewable PPAs primarily against near-term retail electricity prices. Under Japan's emerging policy framework, however, fossil fuel exposure, carbon costs, and power sector auctioning may increasingly affect the delivered cost of conventional electricity. Long-duration renewable contracts that once appeared only marginally attractive on nominal price may become more valuable when carbon policy and volatility risk are incorporated into the procurement model. This is particularly relevant for companies with manufacturing, technology, or data center operations in Japan, where electricity procurement decisions are increasingly tied to Scope 2 emissions, customer requirements, internal carbon targets, and long-term operating cost assumptions. Data centers are creating market reference points. Japan's expanding data center sector is helping accelerate the development of the country's corporate renewable procurement market. Large-scale data center operators require long-duration electricity supply certainty while facing investor and customer pressure to decarbonize operations. That combination has made the sector one of the more visible sources of demand for corporate PPAs. In April 2025, Equinix signed a 20-year PPA with Trina Solar International System Business Unit for 30 megawatts of solar power from the Yufutsu Abira project in Hokkaido. The agreement is important not only because of its duration and size, but because delivery is expected to begin in the third quarter of 2028, underscoring the long lead times involved in developing, contracting, and delivering new renewables supply. Other sectors are also building the market. In January 2024, Aeon Mall signed an agreement with Sun Trinity, a joint venture between Sumitomo Corporation and Shikoku Electric Power, for approximately 15 megawatts of carport solar across 12 locations. The Aeon example is not a 2025 transaction, but it remains relevant because it shows how commercial real estate owners are using distributed solar structures to support renewable procurement across multiple facilities. These transactions matter beyond their immediate capacity numbers. Each deal contributes to the development of legal templates, financing structures, risk allocation models, and operational precedents that can make future transactions easier for other corporate buyers to execute. As more projects close successfully, transaction friction tends to decline across the broader market. Structural constraints still limit expansion. Despite the growth trajectory, Japan's procurement market still faces structural constraints that corporate buyers need to evaluate carefully. Grid congestion and curtailment risk remain significant concerns in some regions, particularly in areas with high renewable penetration and limited transmission flexibility. Japan's regional grid structure also creates additional complexity compared with more highly interconnected electricity markets. Wheeling arrangements, which govern the transfer of contracted electricity across utility territories, can introduce additional fees, operational complexity, and uncertainty for buyers attempting to secure renewable electricity from projects located outside their immediate service region. These challenges do not undermine the case for corporate PPAs in Japan, but they do affect project economics and contract design. Buyers need to understand where a project is located, how the electricity will be delivered or financially settled, what curtailment provisions apply, and how environmental attributes will be documented. The rise of virtual PPAs also reflects this complexity. Virtual structures can help companies manage renewable procurement where physical delivery is difficult, but they introduce their own basis risk, accounting considerations, and claims management requirements. Why procurement reviews are becoming more urgent. For international companies operating energy-intensive facilities in Japan, the strategic window for reassessing procurement structures is narrowing. Many organizations still evaluate Japan through assumptions formed during the earlier stages of liberalization, when utility based procurement remained the simplest and most predictable option. That environment is changing. The combination of record PPA activity in 2025, expanding virtual PPA adoption, mandatory GX ETS implementation, the planned fossil fuel surcharge, and long term emissions reduction targets is beginning to alter procurement economics more materially. The immediate question for corporate buyers is no longer whether renewable procurement is available in Japan. It is whether their current procurement strategy reflects the country's evolving cost structure, grid constraints, carbon policy trajectory, and market linked renewable contracting options. Organizations that begin developing internal expertise around Japanese PPAs, curtailment exposure, wheeling arrangements, virtual contract structures, and carbon pricing now may have greater flexibility than companies that wait until demand for high quality renewable supply intensifies further. Japan's electricity market is still evolving, but the direction of travel is increasingly clear. Procurement strategies built entirely around legacy utility relationships are becoming less aligned with the country's future energy framework. You've been listening to Sustainability Soundbites by Environment and Energy Leader. For partnership opportunities, please reach out to our team.